Prices continue ticking down in the U.S. That's according to the newly released Consumer Price Index report for December. The report showed a steep drop in gas prices, and food prices posted only a modest increase. But rents remained very high and utilities were more expensive. Overall, prices dropped from the month before by 0.1%. Small, but still the first drop in prices since May of 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic rocked the world. This is the last inflation report before the Federal Reserve meets this month. The panel is set to decide whether to increase interest rates again to further reduce inflation. The report could allow the Federal Reserve to further scale back the pace of its aggressive interest rate hikes, as the central bank aims to lower inflation to its 2% target. Samir Samana with the Wells Fargo Investment Institute predicts this report will probably soften the hikes for Americans.
So they'll probably start to, increase in 25 basis point increments now as opposed to 75 or 50. The number of increases probably depends a little bit on whether inflation continues to come down. We think it will. That probably means they only have 2 or 3 rate hikes left. They'll probably stop somewhere around 5%, and then they'll probably wait until the second half of this year to see what the impacts of all the tightening over the past year has been, and then they'll probably make a decision to move forward. If we're right, that will actually be a cut, not a hike. If inflation unfortunately comes back, then they may find themselves having to raise further. But we think that it'll probably be a cut by the end of the year, because a lot of the monetary tightening in the pipeline already should slow inflation and should slow the economy into a recession that will allow them to start to actually focus on a recovery.
Year over year, the Consumer Price Index is still much higher than the Fed's range, increasing 6.5%, following a 7.1% rise in November. Still, the moderation in inflation will be welcomed by Fed officials, but they will probably want to see more evidence that their rate hikes are working. The Fed is engaged in its fastest rate hiking cycle since the 1980s, raising borrowing costs to cool demand in the U.S. economy, which some experts believe could trigger a recession.
We think inflation ends the year actually with a 2% handle, and we think that by the end of the year that the Fed will actually be cutting interest rates, because we think there's going to be a recession kind of in the middle part of the year. That'll allow the Fed to kind of start to actually stimulate the economy into the very tail end of 2023.
But a separate report from the Labor Department today showed initial jobless claims came in below expectations as the labor market remains tight.